diagram of succession, right? So what happens if you don't graze? Plants will go from a bunch of small, diverse plants in a prairie ecosystem, flowers, forbs, a lot of grasses, all that. They'll go into perennials, they'll turn into woody shrubs, they'll turn into, you know the deal, right? We don't want this to happen too much. And the thing is that humans like taking care of their environment. They don't like big fires burning their forests because it sounds bad, and it burns houses, and it can be really destructive. But if we just allow tons of forest to grow, we're just going to have a bunch of forest to burn sometime, as we've been finding, right? So we don't want huge amounts of kindling, and we also don't want deserts. So a succession mentality is important when considering ecological impact of bison. This is tying all together. I know it looks really weird to tie everything together with. Bear with me. Carbon storage and time, okay? This is above ground growth of all the plants in this environment, and this is the carbon storage underground. As plants grow and put seed out, here's right where they have all of their seeds for reproduction, and they have no carbon storage, very low carbon storage, right there. If you graze bison on the range right there, this is going to happen. Desert. You're going to kill all of those plants because there's no carbon storage. You eat that and they will not recuperate. Grasses are very, they recuperate really well and they won't. Whereas if you eat right here, you have plenty of growth, it's still palatable, but they still have some underground storage. Or right here, they have underground storage, there's a lot. Then you'll have more lush and healthier environments. This is how one tiny little thing, soil organic carbon, growth rate, time, can impact a very large landscape in the matter of 1 year or 2 years. All right. My job, for example, was to prevent the desert from happening and make sure that this continued happening. Because in 2 years, you could quickly lose so much of that ecological stability. Okay. So disturbance, proper management of bison, of cattle, of sheep, of people, proper grazing regimes, time, seasonality, utilization rates. There's a certain thing called an animal unit month. It's how much time one animal can spend on X piece of land. Say you have 400 bison, it could be on this piece of land for 1 day, or one bison could spend 400 days on that piece of land, right? So that's one tool that we use. Depending on how you choose all these variables, you can turn harsh environments into food. You can maintain grasslands and rangelands. You can sustain ecological diversity. You can create healthy soils and water storage, and you can allow carbon, nitrogen fixation, storage, and cycling, right? That's a lot of things to be able to do, right? No, not yet. And vice versa. If we don't do this properly, we can destroy these environments, starve people. You know how the Maasai, the Native Americans here that used to rely sold almost exclusively on bison? I'm not saying that we're at that point right now, but a lot of the way that we interact with the environment can either be fixed or exacerbated by how we deal with our rangelands and our grasslands, with our bison, with our consumption of animal, not, right? So for example, how do we turn a harsh environment into food? Okay, nobody's gonna go plant peas in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. They don't grow. I've tried, actually. I dug this really big pit and put all this rotting wood in it and then covered it with all this mulch. And then I waited for a thunderstorm and I put my seeds in it and I looked for 2 weeks and nothing happened. All right? But bison can eat all this really nasty, bitter brush and grass. And we can eat bison and get huge amounts of protein out of it, right? But we don't want to abuse this to the point where we'll destroy the landscape. energy conversion ratios are very important in thinking about these ecological management aspects, right? So here's a rangelands of the world diagram. All of the color is rangelands, which pretty much means that it's land useless for anything other than putting ruminants on. Most of Africa, obviously, right? Elephants, zebras, all, you know, lagomorphs. So if we put these concepts into practice at a global scale, we can kind of change, either further destroy or almost fix some of the mistakes that we've been making so far by how we can immobilize nitrogen from the environment, bring carbon and store it underground, put water back into the soil, all these things, right? It's very complicated. I'm trying to give you a general picture, but there's a lot of potential in what bison can mean and a lot of reason why they are so venerated as a cultural icon by these populations that came before us, and how we can think of that is very important too.
I can't wait to hear one of you guys, one of you talk about energy convergent ratios out in the zoo. You know, you're gonna blow me away. I can't wait. I'm so excited. Okay, so what does all this mean? What's it coming down to? You all have heard many of presentations and information about the EME initiative. Yes, the goal is to restore free-ranging bison to native territory. In 2014, there's a treaty among 11 tribes in the US and Canada to restore wild bison to the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains. The importance of this being a group effort was because not just one tribe could do this. It's going to take everybody working together. With all of the tribes together, they're contributing space of about 6.3 million acres, right? So all of them working together really opens up all of this space. So that's really exciting. And let me see if I have anything else on my notes. The treaty was signed in Browning, Montana, so you've heard them talking, Amy talk about this and Dr. Parrott talk about this. But the people are ready for the bison to come back and restore balance, so all of the ecological significance, but also the cultural significance for them. So they are going to be practicing conservation and preserving their native culture. They're going to be teaching this to their children. The teens are going to be in camps and learning all about the ceremonies, and one day our teens are going to be able to go and visit and experience this, and you can as well. So you'll be able to possibly visit the ranches and things. So this is one of the managers of the project, and one of his quotes is, "In the beginning, these animals were our economy. They were our food, our clothing, our shelter. They were our tools. That's what we lived on." And they're waiting to be able to pass that on to their children. And for me, it's a bit of a personal journey as well. I'm descendants of Native Americans, and my grandfather's father was a Blackfeet Indian. So it's all very personal. But also, so in 2014 when the treaty was signed, Oakland Zoo, WCS and Blackfeet all working together, and they moved 88 bison from the Elk Island Elk Island Ranch in Canada, and they moved them down to Browning, Montana. And of those 88, we are going to get some of those female bison here, and then from the National Park Service, we're going to get some males. So we'll have this great combination from two different areas that will be here for our herd.
How many acres in that facility?
In the bison? Oh, you know, I don't remember.
I believe it's 11 acres, but I will double check.
Okay, around 10 or 11 acres. 10 or 11 acres. The offspring from our herd will go back to Browning, Montana to be a part of the purebred herd that's going to be on native land.
Okay. Will we keep it for a while? The offspring?
Yes, we'll keep them for a little while. So one of the things I'm really excited to see is in the Oakland Hills, we're going to have red dogs. And red dogs are the young calves that come out this really pretty red, rusty color. And so once they start reaching their yearling age, they start to get dark brown. So when you see them out on the range and you see these little red, they call them red dogs, it's, ugh, breaks your heart. Anyway, we'll have that here too. Let's see if there's anything else. We are wrapping it up. I'm going to pass it over to you.
So through all of this, the point is that you understand a little bit better what you can do and what you can tell other people to do, right? Unfortunately, I can't offer the most concrete things to solve the world's problems, but you can think critically and carefully. That's really important. And do your research, continue learning, speak in light of the complexity of your findings, right? Go travel, visit Blackfeet Nation, visit national parks, visit ranches, ask a lot of questions. Consumer choice is a big thing. Now that you know that there's bison meat in most slightly alternative food stores, I'm not saying go eat it or anything, but just think about what things you can do, as I'm sure all of you have already been doing pretty hardcore, in terms of what your money means and how it impacts the rest of this. Know that everyone can play a role, and don't make generalizations. Some of them, in interpreting to the public, could include eating, saying, what are some of my generalizations?
Beef in total, eating beef or eating bison is a problem, like a huge conservation problem. But you want to keep in mind there's a cultural significance to bison for some people. So just, keeping in mind, you never know who you're talking to.
Yeah, right. And acknowledging that these management plans across the United States are really complicated. So saying bison don't do harm to the environment or do harm to the environment as a generalization, those can be like hard things to try to disseminate, right? So we have 1 minute for questions.
Miss A.
So, where are the males coming from? Do they carry brucellosis?
Good question. The males do not carry brucellosis. They are coming from the Yellowstone herd. Yellowstone. Yeah. Yes.
So with brucellosis, is it a chronic condition and the animal lives for a long time, or does it kill?
The female will live her entire life carrying brucellosis if she is positive.
If she's not treated, yes.
And it will cause the fetuses to abort?
Yes.
Most of the
And so
time.
she won't be able to produce any offspring?
Yeah.
Usually, yeah. Yes.
My understanding was that the difference between plains bison and forest bison is environmental and not genetic. Is that correct?
I think it is
It is which?
Which one's
environmental.
Plain. We're getting plain.
Oh, so the question is the difference between plains bison, forest bison, environmental and not genetic? I think since they are a prehistoric species, they have come here over the ice bridge. They have developed a genetic interaction with their environmental conditions. So I think it's a little bit of both, but my guess would be it's primarily environmental in terms of how they develop inside an environment from the time they're born to the when they die.
A practical question. We're going to have 18 bison foraging 9 to 11 hours a day.
20.
What are we going to feed them here at the open zoo?
We're going to have to bring up
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll have to bring things in. I don't know what their husbandry plan is. I haven't heard husbandry plan at all. Yes.
If the males have this period where they're solitary, is there going to be an intent to replicate that, or just keep the herd together?
They will probably be able to separate them, but then again, that's
will males be
animal
able
care.
to enact their solitary activities in the zoo? I think one thing for female health and stability, males can often really troll females and eat and really harm themselves because they're walking all day and harm the female because they don't let her stop and graze because they're going to mount her. So I'm sure there's going to have to be some segregation of these things so that they don't get tired. These are some of the main points before we finish up that we'd like you to take away. You can read them on your own. They're kind of generalizations to help us tie it all with a pretty ribbon in our brains.
Just a comment, please. In one of your earlier historical issues, there was a line that caught my attention where Native Americans were complicit in the demise of the bison.
Is it not too much?
And that caught my eye just because complicit was Washington Post's word of the year last year. And I really think that those in power are the ones who force somebody to do that, and maybe that word is not particularly the right one to use. That's just for my
maybe.
Yeah, I would definitely say there, in reading and research, because I wasn't there were some tribes that were more instrumental in horse and gun hunting of bison and hunting in larger numbers, but not to excess, like, mass killings.
Like the army.
You had a question.
Yeah, no, it was basically what Don was asking, the question of how the carbon and nitrogen is going to be managed on this.
Yeah, so it'll obviously be a sink, because we're bringing things out from outside, and they're going to be crapping right there. So there's going to be so many nutrients right there, right? And so they're going to have tractors, you have to clean out the dung, it's intensive management. We don't have any other alternatives at the zoo. But it can be done really well.
Okay, I was listening to some stuff that they were doing in